No, you're listening to Words About Books. I'm Nate. I'm gonna cut that last part.
I was going to say, that's a little too on the nose.
I'm I'm joined by my co-host Ben, who is saying stuff that I'm gonna leave in, but I'm not gonna leave the thing he's referencing in. So you're just gonna have to fill in the blanks yourself. How's it going, Ben?
Oh, it's going good. I love our vague book references to
I'll bleep that part. That way, it's even more vague.
but
So today we're covering part 3 of The Burning God, which is part 3 of the trilogy, the Poppy War trilogy,
can I
by
just
R.F.
say,
Kuang.
if you're here after having listened to the first 2 episodes, you're one of the good ones. You're a super fan. You are an intellectual, a gentleman, and that goes for the women as well. However you identify, you're a gentleman and a scholar, because only the true galaxy brains can put up with us ragging on a book for 5 hours, 4.5 hours at this point.
Well, in our defense, she should have written a better book.
If you're still here for part 3 after listening to the other 2 parts, you know what you're in for. I think we can skip the preamble and we can jump right in. If you haven't checked out the other 2 parts yet, you might want to do that if this is your favorite book in the world. I don't know if you're going to enjoy what we have to say about it, but I think I stand by everything we say. I think they're good criticisms, even if you disagree. And I think we should all be civil and have a fun conversation about it. That said, Nate's going to do the summary, so it might get less civil.
Yeah, so part 3. What a part 3. It sure was a part 3 to this book.
What I can say for sure is that it ended.
This is true. It definitely ended. Anyway, part 3 opens up with 2/3 of the Hesperian fleet in ruins, and the Hesperians are reconsidering being involved in Nicara because that's how the sunk cost fallacy works, Ben. If you use resources to secure this nation, but then you run into a little snag, you just pull out, right?
America could learn from the Hesperians, and I'm not joking.
I've listed some examples of real life where we just immediately pulled out when things got rough, like Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam. There's a French one. There's Algeria. There's India for the British. When the going got tough, you just pull out and say it's too difficult, man.
No politician had clearly staked their career on this being a good idea over in Hesperia. In Hesperia, they really analyze the cost benefit of any given situation, and when tens of thousands of your men and women have died for a continent most of your citizens could not find on a map, that's time to go. Not double down.
Yeah, there are corporations over in Hesperia that are like, oh, we're losing lives? Oh no. Oh no. We've got to get our Hesperian men and women away from that nasty continent.
The dirigible manufacturers are like, oh my god, the whole fleet was destroyed? Oh no. I'm definitely going to honor the warranty I had on those blimps. There's no way we could be contracted to make a whole other fleet. Oh my gosh, that'd be so expensive for you. We'd have to raise so many taxes. If only we had colonies. Hey, it's a problem that solves itself, dog. You tax the shit out of the colonies to finance the war to get the colonies.
Yeah, and if only we had, I don't know, let's say a group of lower middle class and poor people who can enroll in the army to supposedly have a better life that we could take advantage of. But not in Hesperia. Not in Hesperia. Hesperia is a a technological wonder. It's all upper class people all the way. And
well, I was going to say, what if that's the case? What if that's the case that Hesperia, judging, like, we're making fun of this, saying that it's not a political reality that the Hesperians would pull out, but what if it is? The Hesperians are actually a technocratic utopia, and the theme of the book. What if the crazy?
And they really are trying to spread.
What if the crazy theme of the book is
and technology?
Is that it would wind up being the right thing to do to have them take over for a minute? Wouldn't that be a weird end to this whole story?
That would be a very strange ending. If the ending was like, wow, Hesperia is actually in the right, or at the very least, we need them.
It would make it seem like this entire book was just Rin perpetuating a war for the fun of it, while the outcome was already predetermined at the end of the last book.
Yeah, it would be very strange if this entire book were just the Rin Revenge World Tour, and then nothing she did actually really had an impact at all, except for now there are just more people in graves.
Do you think Kuang got sick of the one-to-one comparisons between Rin and Mao, and like Rin and the rise of the Chinese Communist Party, and so she decided to draw the key distinction between Mao and Rin? Like the biggest difference between Mao and Rin is that Mao won. And like all of his sacrifices then seemed like they were worth it because he won.
Part of it too is like Mao seemed like he had like a brain inside of his head, and like
he had more than two emotions, angry and stupid.
Yeah, it's like Mao was like a person and Rin was like a cartoon character based on that person.
Mao was a person and Rin was Saiyan Saga Vegeta.
Yeah. Well, who made that initial comparison of, oh, it's teenage girl Mao? Like, if that was Kuang,
idea. I don't know if it was Kuang.
That one's on her.
I do remember reading...
I don't know either.
I remember reading somewhere that what I think I read was someone like Mao. And I've said this before. I think she said how someone like Mao comes to be. How somebody from humble beginnings...
They get really, really pissed off. And they just get angrier and angrier and just kill more and more people. I don't think that's how Mao came to be.
Well, no.
I think Mao had, like, charisma and people followed him. Completely unlike Rin until part 2 of the 3rd book in this trilogy. Here's the thing. I felt like the last book, The Dragon Republic, did a good job of starting to get away from the one-to-one allegory that was definitely set up in the first book. Mm-hmm. I felt like the second book was kind of its own thing, and it wasn't paralleling history, and then I don't know what happened with the third book. It feels like maybe there was an ending in mind, and they had to twist this book from the second book to the end of the third book, and so you get the result of just an unfocused mess between the two.
So before you jump into the summary, I do want to briefly discuss, because now we're at the end. Now we're going to find out what this was all about. And as you could probably guess, if you have not read the book, which I do recommend you do, I know Nate doesn't, but there's a lot of interesting...
Yeah, why read 600 pages? 650 pages. Why read like 2,000 pages because you have to read 2 books ahead of this?
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I do think it's still... This book is a very interesting discussion, and it is doing something interesting with the fantasy genre. It's just not a satisfying resolution in so many ways. And so I do want to mention...
Agreed.
Themes. So you would have to at least agree...
Those are for... first grade book reports. Yeah. You idiot.
So
I keep changing the grade.
I know you do. It always gets lower.
Less, I think.
Yeah. Because he said 8th grade book reports. What I was going to say is we can both probably agree that one of the themes from the get-go, colonialism, that has remained a consistent theme through all 3 books.
Yeah, I would say colonialism, that's a theme. And what is it saying about colonialism, though?
That I have no freaking idea.
Because I feel like it waffles. And I feel like we could talk about this more once we get through the summary, Ben.
Yeah.
Because I got words. I feel like she waffles on what her message is.
I don't think there's any conclusions. That's the problem. The book ends. There's not a lot of conclusions. Let's get into the summary. We will talk about it more. Just as we go through the summary, keep in your mind colonialism. It's bad. I mean, it's bad. Like, it's bad, right? It is bad. We know it's bad.
So anyway, the Hesperian fleet's in ruins. The Hesperians are like, maybe we should pull out so that Rin has a chance. Rin also lost half her army and 2/3 of the civilians with her, but then we're told she has the military advantage? Question mark? And then they set a timetable to win the war in 6 months. The entire war. And then they're like, I can get soldiers together in 2 weeks. And my note just reads, since when? And again, listen to the first episode on Story Collapse. This might just be me going like, this seems highly implausible. I don't know if that's plausible. It felt weird to me. And I've never quite been on board with Kuang's depiction of war because 1, she hasn't been in a war. 2, I don't think she's studied a whole lot of war. I don't think she's written about a lot of war.
Here's the weird. I'm gonna actually say something here. Here's the thing.
Okay.
People might not know about Nate, because Nate plays a little bit of a character on this show. But I'm gonna break the fourth wall.
What?
I'm gonna break the fourth wall, and I'm gonna tell you something about Nate.
You said that. I told you this in confidence, Ben.
Nate is actually a huge history nerd. Much more of a history nerd than I am, has read more history than I have. He secretly loves reading history. He plays nothing but history spreadsheet games. It's actually very nerdy, how into history he is. So it's not just him being pedantic when he says that this stuff bothers him. This is a man who cares very much about logistics. But I'm interested to know, when you're quoting the 2-week time frame, you're not just talking about 2 weeks to train a soldier, right? You're talking the shaman time.
It's 2 weeks to train the army and some shaman, and then 6 months to win the entire war.
Because I could believe if you were going with the South's initial plan of, we got population for days, I'm going to give you a 2-week crash course on sticking the pointy end of the sword into the other guy. Good luck. If you die, somebody else pick up that sword and do the same thing. What blows my mind is that she's going to, in 2 weeks, train magical special forces.
I actually have this down here. I never understood that because it seemed like it required a lot of training and a spiritual journey just to get to the Pantheon, and not just being a superstitious, drugged up asshole. But here we are in this book where Rin is like, let's just do the psych but worse, and we'll get tons of drugs with these recruits. And yeah.
The very little background we get on Shaman in the first book is, if I remember right, each of those shaman that we have a background on, you have Chagan and Kara, who were trained from birth to connect to the Pantheon and the world beyond. You've got Alton, also trained from birth. You've got a few... Do
you remember the shadow guy?
I don't remember his backstory.
in the brief moment he was like alive on screen, he was thinking about how his former master took him into a completely pitch black labyrinth and left him there and said, "You will become the master shaman if you can navigate your way out, and if you can't, you're going to starve to death later." And that was his final test. So it seemed like he probably trained for years and years and years, and he had a master who trained him in the art of this shadow god so that he could be a master of shadow fu.
Yeah.
Right?
I got the vibe that all of these people were from like out of the way villages or something that still had a strong religious tradition. And that's how
you had other shaman who were, they're like, "Oh, don't go into those forests. There's a witch in there." And the witch would get a new recruit and be like, "I'm getting old. I need to pass on the old ways, and you're going to be my pupil." And, that kind of thing is the vibe I got. Like, you're going to train for years and years, and it's not just so that you'll have safeguards in place so you don't go crazy. Because when I heard this, my thought was, in the first book, when the Muganese invade, why didn't Daji just grab all the drugs she could, rounded up a bunch of peasants, and go, "Here, do a bunch of drugs. I'm going to throw wave after wave of magic shaman at the Muganese. You're going to basically spend yourself killing all of them, and then I'll cull you." Like, she could have won the war by just throwing magical bombs at people.
Yeah, or Zhang's warning of there are worse things than getting colonized and losing a war. And one of those worst things is a god taking over a human body, becoming immortal, and not being in the Chulu Korik.
Yeah, the end of the world, basically. I mean, can you imagine if Rin were taken over, she'd be dropping literal, actual nuclear bombs. I shouldn't say literal, it's metaphorical, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, because what she does is actually orders of magnitude more destructive than a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, she destroys an entire island and basically wipes out an entire people.
Yeah, the nuclear bomb wiped out cities. She wiped out the main island of, let's just say, Japan. For a weird comparison I pulled out of nowhere.
According to the website, Ben, they're not the same. Even though they are both the exact same shape, except for Mugen is...
It bends the other way. Somebody did the horizontal flip tool.
100. Yeah, exactly.
I did want to talk about this because this was... By the time I got to part 3, I was like, okay, let's just see where this goes. I don't think Kuang was all that interested in shamanism or the fantasy elements of this series by the time she sat down to write this book.
100% agreed.
And if she was, big miss. It really feels like she stopped trying.
Well, she actually asked the question. One of the characters that Rin is training to be a shaman says, "How do we choose a god? Or does it choose us? Did the fire god choose you because you're a Spearly, or..." And then he gets cut off, and then we never address that question at all, ever. I feel like that's actually a good question. How do you choose a deity to worship if you don't give a shit about the spirituality? Like, what? How does that work? And if you're not going to answer the question, that's fine. Why did you bring it up?
It occurred to me for the first time, I don't know why I didn't think of it earlier, that she is making fun of herself and the things she just decided not to engage with anymore. There's no way that Jun comment, "By the way, Jun died," there's no way that was not intentional. She knew people cared about June.
Was intentional.
She knew people cared about what was going to happen with June, and she was like, "Yeah, we're not doing that." And
just kill him in the last one, then. Why do you keep letting him escape? And then you're like, fuck it, he's gone. Yeah, you know that Chagan thing? I don't care about it anymore. Kasegi? Who? I don't know who that guy is. He's gone. She literally she wrote a bunch of stuff for the previous book and then was like, "I don't want to do that, so, like, let's just conflict over. Done. I Thanos snapped them out of existence.
There's a couple of these comments. There's when she says, I baked him into dumplings. And Jiang goes, you fucking what? That's the actual quote. And then there's the Jun comment. There's the Chagan just, united the clans off screen, whatever. We're not doing that. Then there's, does the god pick you or do you pick the god? Or like, what, blah, 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 blah. And she's basically saying like, ha, 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 I don't care. That's the response. Yeah. I think it's supposed to be a joke. I think it's actually intended to be a joke that she's decided, I will not be addressing these issues. These are issues people care deeply about. Let's all have a laugh together.
But you still brought back the trifecta. Why?
Oh, well, I actually even have...
Why are you mixing fan service with the antithesis of that? Where you just shit all over that.
Well, you know how we were talking, this occurred to me when I was editing the last episode. When we were talking about, I said something like, I'm 34 years old, I don't care about this who would win, Rin or Goku bullshit. I think that's the thought she had. I think she was like looking at these like, oh, I wonder what this god can do. And I wonder like, this is my god that I would invent. And these are the power sets I'd give it. I think she was looking at that stuff and going like, who fucking cares? And I think she's making fun of those people. But what blows my mind is I think those are the only people who are going to like this. Because anybody who's I was going to say, those are the
people who are probably giving her 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah, those are the people who are so easily emotionally manipulated into being attached to Rin as a character and being invested in her pain when she's started off as, I've never seen an author do this, I don't think, where a character started off as a well-rounded 3-dimensional person and devolved into a 1-dimensional character. And it was the main character. It blows my mind like every time we talk about this, it blows my mind how off track this went. And I just don't know. It's so weird. Like you can just tell how done with this she was. And I think...
Okay, so you are agreeing with me that it came off that she was done with this entire thing.
I think
I am, and maybe I'm not being very nice here, and maybe I'm being just a little mean because I was invested in the first 2 books, but this came off to me like season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, where it's very clear that the writers are like, I just want to finish this and get my obligation over with so I can move on.
I think she still wanted to do a good job. I think she put a lot of effort into ending this well. But I think when it became apparent that certain things were not going to fit, there were 2 options here. There were either change your planned story significantly, or this has to be longer and more complicated.
So she did the anti-George R. Martin, where instead of expanding his 3-book series into 7 and maybe, 10, because who the hell knows, even if he ever finished it, he might decide he needs more books. She went, nope, it's 3 and it's staying as 3, and we're going to just compress as hard as we can.
I do think she consciously chose not to address certain things. She's like, I'm dropping the Jun plotline. I'm already at 600 pages. I'm dropping any further exploration of the Pantheon. I'm already at 600 pages.
Better way to do it.
Drop the Long March.
There's a better way to do it. And
drop the part 1.
Well, first of all, drop the Long March and part 1, okay? That frees you up like, 250 to 300 pages? But also, look, I'm fine with you just saying someone says that there's some massive tribal conflict going on up north, and we don't see Chagan again, but we know that he's fighting. Fine, whatever. it's just weird that he just appears and he's like, yep, I'm the leader of all 100 tribes. It's never been done before. I did it in like 2 months. No big deal. It's like there's levels of not addressing it or wrapping it up.
I could give you that if that was the only thing like that. If you wanted to have Chagan do that, go nuts. But then you got to fully deal with this trifecta stuff. You can't have both of those just get wrapped up in a nice little bow at the same time off screen.
The trifecta were completely f***ing changed. One will die, one will sleep forever, one will rule. You've already dealt with 2 members of the trifecta. Yeah, you didn't need to bring Zhang back. You didn't ever need to bring back what's-his-nuts, the Dragon Emperor. I don't even remember his name. I'm not going to go look it back up because he's so unimportant. And it's just like, they weren't set up as coming back in the second book. They were, in fact, the opposite. They were set up as not being in the story ever again. You didn't need to bring them back. I'm saying that there was a way she could have utilized these 600 pages to address the things that needed to be addressed instead of just, let's have more revenge pornography of Rin. This time Rin's going to blow fire down his throat. This time Rin's going to torture the nun. This time Rin is going to, oh gosh, she's going to just burn the city down even though they surrendered. Oh.
So, like, you know me. If this were just torturing nuns and blowing fire down people's throats, I'd have enjoyed it. I was ready for revenge porn. Kill Bill this. Let's do it. Let's just have Rin exacting bloody vengeance on every person who ever wronged her until finally someone has to put her down like Old Yeller. It's the slam dunk that you could do. That's all the series needed. You could just come in, slam dunk this thing with Rin just blowing people out of the water until finally it's too much and they gotta kill her. Or like Kitay's gotta off himself to kill her. And that would have been the easiest thing in the world to do. But instead, you got this weird mess of, F you, I'm not doing the shamanism thing anymore. And I'm going to tell this joke because I thought of this joke and I'm very proud of it. And I want to get it on mic that becoming a shaman turned into dark fantasy Peter Pan. You sprinkle a little bit of opium dust, think your most miserable thought, and fly off into the pantheon. That's all it takes. and then, bizarrely, out of nowhere, introducing the plot thread that Rin might be Spearly royalty and also the bastard daughter of Zhang. And then not discussing that at all and then announcing you're not going to write another book in this series. So that's why I said it almost demands more books, because it was like, okay, time to wrap this up. Here's 5 new questions.
Well, Ben, I don't know if I mentioned this on mic or not, because I know I've told you enough times. This felt like Part 2 and Part 3 were completely different books, and Part 1 was filler that serviced neither. So you got this weird, disjointed mess of a book, and just pick Part 2 or pick Part 3 and make that your entire book and flesh it out. And get rid of Part 1.
I love Part 2. I defended it. I would defend it again. Part 2 and the last 20 pages of Part 3 carried this book to 3 stars for me. Everything else
Again, I went 2.5 and rounded down.
Everything else, to borrow your phrase, is kind of garbage. I hate to be that dismissive of it, but we're on Part 3, so it's just us and the fans now. So
yeah, all 3 of you. Thanks for sticking around.
Well,
we destroyed our podcast career.
Well, the thing, and I've said this before, and I say this every time we talk about it, is Kuang is such a good writer. She has such an interesting voice and such an interesting perspective that it's just doubly sad that this whiffed so hard. Because, like, I still want to read her new book. It's just, you're right. I feel like she was done with it. And I do think she worked very hard, but I also think she had a limit. I just think she had a certain amount of brain power and time she was going to devote to making this work. And I think within those parameters, she worked as hard as she could, but she was not going to let this book go over time or over budget. She was not going to ask for more time. She was not going to ask for a fourth book. She was just going to get it done, and she got it done. And I do think she tried very hard, but I think she lost Rin, to be perfectly honest. I don't think she really related to Rin anymore. I don't feel like she identified with Rin. I feel like she identified 100% with Neja.
Yeah, because Neja was rational, cool guy who was willing to compromise in places where it made total sense to compromise instead of viewing the world as black and white.
Well, I think when she was 19, she was Rin. She was young, determined, and like just full of anger for the injustices of the world. And then when she was 24, she was Neja, mired in complicated problems, trying to make the compromises that needed to be made to make everything run in everybody's best interest, and just bogged down by stupid, selfish people who refused to do what it took. And I think I think that's why the book ends. The book was always going to end with Rin dying, obviously. But I don't think necessarily that the book was always going to end with Neja ruling.
Now, I agree 100% with that. Anyway, let's get back to the summary, because I literally got like 2 paragraphs in before you were like, hold on. Let's talk about the end game.
I need to exposit.
So does Chagan, Ben. Chagan needs to sit down with Rin for a very, very long time and explain the entire plot of Part 3 and the objective of Part 3. Rin's got to go kill Neja's dragon that resides in a grotto near Arlong. So go get him. Also, he talks about all this other bullshit, but like we just said, Kuang didn't care, why should I? So let's move on. I also love that Rin, she thinks about all the psych members who died, but like only the ones that she remembers. She doesn't remember the water bucket guy or the fox guy. I don't even know their names. I don't even care.
I remember Aracha was the water bucket guy.
So yeah, Rin, she's trained shaman. It's really easy and just requires a little bit of drugs and a little bit of sadness. Yeah. She trains 4 shaman. One is Poison Girl, who was the sexually assaulted girl from earlier. One
and a cannibal.
One is the Great Turtle, who was buried alive kid from earlier. One is
take that pin out of him.
Yeah, there you go. One is Healer Woman. I don't think she was introduced until just now. And one is dead because he got poisoned to death by Poison Girl, and he died horribly and retching. So we just got 3 now, and also Rin. Form up the Fantastic Four. And they spend a long time training their powers, and
like 3 days.
Well, it's a long time in page length. How about that?
Who was the Poison Girl's god?
Who cares? They never mentioned it. Who cares? Ben, this okay.
Hang on,
I'm gonna
get Poppy War Wiki. What is there a good name for it?
Ben, you're being one of those fans. It doesn't fucking matter what god does what. I'm more interested in where does the Maker fit in? That is an interesting philosophical question. Is the Maker a real god? Is the Maker perhaps one of the Pantheon? Or is the Maker beyond the Pantheon? I don't know, Ben. That's an interesting question. I don't give a flying who Poison Girl's deity is because it doesn't matter.
I think the answer to that question
worship
is
the deity.
The Maker is not a real god. I do think that's the honest answer. I don't think Kuang had any plans for the Maker whatsoever. I think it is a false god made up by the Hesperians.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and I think that that's dumb. Like, oh yeah, it turns out you just are believing in the wrong religion. There's a true religion. It's these things. You're wrong.
I think it's valid. I think it's a valid thing to say about that, but it's if you.
She didn't care about the philosophy.
Yeah,
of
she didn't
the
do anything
stuff she
with
was
it.
making up. She brought up that interesting question in like a sentence in the second book, and it was never discussed or explored ever again. So that was my fault for even believing that would ever be addressed again. When Rin was like, "Wow, this whole Maker thing. Okay, the racism is not cool, but I do like the idea of an afterlife and like the do good unto others thing. And I wonder if the Maker is part of the pantheon." Or I think she was like, "I wonder if there's something beyond the pantheon." It's like,
Ren,
okay,
Ren, I'm just going to sit you down here since we're having these meetings together for a few moments, and I'd like to give you some literature, some light reading. Here's a copy of Dune by our greatest prophet, Frank Herbert. In this, he's going to discuss the finer points of monotheistic Abrahamic religion, and if you get through that, there's a lot more.
so yeah, Rin trains the X-Men 10 miles away from camp. Or, no, a little less than 10 miles, because Kitay and Rin's range is 10 miles. Like, their spiritual bond only lasts 10 miles. That's a thing. And, she stares off into the distance with tears in her eyes, Ben. She thinks about Zhang, her mentor, and possibly her father, but she doesn't think about that. And she says, "You were always a fucking coward." And my note just says, "Fuck you, Rin. That dude literally saved your life at the cost of his mind and his life. And you're shitting on him for wanting you to not become a monster that has to think about how she can't put into reality all these horrible things that she's done, or she'll shatter."
So here's the thing. Last episode I said that I understand you're not supposed to like Rin. And I agree that is intentional. But I think the problem is I don't like Rin for reasons that I don't think are intentional. So this is a great example of that. I think you're supposed to... I think what Kuang is trying to say here is that Rin thinks Zhang is a coward because he couldn't finish what he started, and he developed a conscience. And you're supposed to not like that because that's not a moral opinion to have. I don't like Rin in that moment because that doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, I get why I'm supposed to not like it. I get what she's trying to say. But it doesn't make any sense for Rin at that moment to think that thought.
No. Because he literally overcame that cowardice and saved her life and bought her this opportunity that she has right now.
Yeah.
He gave his life and his mind to allow her to continue on.
You're allowed to think Zhang is a coward when he refuses to leave the Chulu Korok to help you. And she did. And I understood that. That makes sense. You're allowed to think Zhang is a coward when he asks you to kill him and don't wake Riga. I understand that because it seems like he's not willing to do what it takes to save his people. But when you're doing the thing he died enabling you to do, he no longer disagrees with you. He believes in you. That's why he saved you. So it doesn't make sense at this point to think he's a coward. That's just a cheap shot to remind us that Rin's a piece of shit. And I think that's really ham-fisted and clumsy. And again, I don't like Rin because she's rejecting pacifist ideals and becoming a militarist. I don't like Rin because she's stupid. And that's a stupid thought to have.
Stupid and angry. Those are her two thoughts, sometimes both.
Often the dumbest are the angriest. See Trump
you
supporters.
Want me to talk about this thing where Rin tells Poison Girl you can make sure nobody ever suffers like your sister? and then and then it's like, you know that there's probably wide scale levels of people suffering exactly like your sister because of the things you are doing.
I do.
You are destroying order and imposing chaos on a system, and then you're just kind of hoping that nobody commits any sexual assaults or nobody starts killing neighbors to get what precious few resources are left in the wake of your horrible destruction.
Well, and you don't think women are not being forced to sell their bodies when they would rather not, for food and security in the chaos you've created by destabilizing entire regions again? No, for a war that has no ideals behind it, and you have absolutely no idea what you're going to do when you win.
It really does have no... You're absolutely right. It has no ideals. Rin's entire thing is, I'm just going to kill more people and then I'll win. Checkmate.
She begins to have a vague anti-colonialist perspective, but that only comes after she worked for the colonialists for an entire book without question. So it's not like... She doesn't like the way they talk to her.
No, Ben. No, Ben. It's worse than that. It wasn't without question. She realizes as that book goes on that things are not going to go the way Visera is pretending they will, and that the Hesperians will definitely turn on her. She just didn't realize how hard that they would turn on her and how bad it would be for the country.
So I think it's worth mentioning that Rin has one moral: no rape. And hey, if you got to pick a moral, if you got to pick only one, not a bad one to pick.
Agreed.
I just wish it had been addressed that at the moment, Rin is probably the leading cause of sexual assault in the nation. And it doesn't, I don't say that in any way to excuse the people committing the acts. There is never an excuse to commit the acts. But one of the things about war is that it brings out the absolute worst, or people who always were waiting for their opportunity to do that begin to seize it when you totally remove any kind of law enforcement from the scenario. There's no stability, there's no food. This is not going to do good things for women's rights. And that's never interrogated. Rin never goes back to an area she quote unquote liberated and sees what she's done. It's interrogated like so much of the book. In the last 20 pages, somebody finally brings it up. Like Rin says something like Golanice, and Nuja finally calls her out on it. And he basically says, you say Golanice the way certain people say 9/11, as if just invoking the name of a tragedy validates every point you're making. And what you're doing is going to be worse than 1,000 Golanices. And Rin has no defense for that. Because it's absolutely true.
Yes, exactly.
And so I guess at the tail end, in one sentence, it's interrogated. And I know I'm not the person to tell anyone how to write on this topic. I just found it strange. This is the one thing they do to humanize Rin. And again, this is still like, this is another moment where it's like, I don't like Rin, not for the reasons you want me not to like her. I don't like Rin because she doesn't even understand the ways she's hurting people. Like, yeah, Rin's not personally going to rape anyone, but Rin is the biggest enabler of rape in the region at the moment.
Let's keep pushing on that. Your army's on the march. They come to a town whose nickname is the Whore.
Yeah, that really bothers you.
I think that it probably wouldn't have bothered me if this book were a book that I enjoyed. I think, okay, whatever. But it just came off as a teenage edgelord name.
I don't think it was as edgelordy, but okay.
I'm willing to admit it's probably not a big deal at all. So Rin thinks of Sun Tzu, or whatever his name is in this universe. I'm not going to look it up. Sun Tzu. So he's like, hey, you should take a city intact because a highly destructive campaign favors no one. And my thought when I read that out loud was, and Rin's not going to follow this up. And Rin is just going to ignore the advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the book actually says, Rin's not taking that advice today. She wants to cut Neja off from the town's economy. And she herself is like, well, if I can't have it, he can't have it either. But you could have it.
Yep. Well, no,
you could easily have it. What are you talking about? I'm sure this town would pay you a lot of money to not kill them.
She reckons that she doesn't have the troops to hold it.
That's okay. You've got magic. Once you display what you can do, they will probably pay you a cartload of gold to just go away. Done. Instead, she's like, I'm just going to destroy it. Let me reiterate that. This is a civil war, Ben. Mm-hmm. She wants to claim this country as her own, and her plan is to burn a town down full of her own people.
See, this is where having a philosophy like
or
Mao,
wave after wave of Southerners.
If you were Mao, you could say, look at these decadent bourgeois capitalists. Let's get them, boys. And then you would have an excuse for why you just destroy them without remorse.
And you, the reader, would be able to dissect that and go, is this really right, what she's doing? Yeah, she's redistributing the wealth at the cost of these people's lives. Is that a good thing? You could debate, like, it's gray. It's shades of gray. Here, it's black and white. She's doing an evil thing. She's killing her own people just because she can't think of another way to not kill them.
But this is another instance of it's not portrayed that way. I don't think Kuang knows it's evil. Do you?
Well, it follows up with they surrender and she continues to kill them. And she's like, oh shit, those are a bunch of white flags. I've been killing people for the last half hour all on my own.
Yeah, Rin realizes she's the only one still fighting. But, yeah, we're supposed to not like her for that. But why was Rin accepting surrenders in the first place? She doesn't have the troops to hold this, right?
She has wave after wave of Southern people, except sometimes she doesn't. But here's the thing. Again, Ben, you can go up with your magic shaman, you could blow a hole in the wall.
She did.
And you can send them another message. She didn't do that. She blew a hole in the wall, and then she sent her troops in to kill everyone. You could blow a hole in the wall and say, hey, you don't have a wall anymore. If I march in there, I will kill everyone. And they will say, we surrender. Here's a cartload of gold. Here's our town magistrate's son or whatever. You can hold them hostage so we don't betray you. There's a number of ways you could get this town taken care of without killing half the population, burning down all the fucking shelter.
I 100% agree with you. I'm just going to ask you this question because I honestly don't remember. Was it not her intention to burn the town to the ground because she couldn't hold it?
She wanted to burn it to the ground. I believe the book says to make a statement, which is horrible.
So why is she accepting surrenders?
That's a good question, Ben. She wants to burn the town down to make a statement, but she stops burning it to the ground because they surrender, and so she stops eventually.
This is why I said I don't think Kuang knew what she was doing. This is why I say we're supposed to not like Rin because she didn't accept the surrender and she kept burning people. And even Rin's like, oh, that's a whoopsie-daisy. But
you're right.
She
supposed to burn it to the ground.
We're supposed to think Rin is a cool, bucking the old system genius for not following the advice of that old man Sun Tzu and his old way of thinking that doesn't work in this modern world of dirigibles and magic men. And it's like, I think that was supposed to be Rin thinking outside the box and being revolutionary. And we were supposed to kind of be like, yeah, she makes the tough calls.
I thought it was her being just a fucking idiot.
It was. It was a very stupid thing to think.
But Sun Tzu says I should hide my troop numbers so I can surprise them, but I'm just gonna march right out with my 20 men to fight their 10,000-man army. I don't care about you, Sun Tzu.
I don't know if you read Sun Tzu, but there's a lot of stuff in Sun Tzu that is, who cares? Like, which way to apply fire and what weather to do it in and shit like that. It's like, yeah, in a world of bombs, who the hell cares? But
there's stuff that still holds true.
Yeah, there's just universal truths of battle.
Right. And psychology. Like, he had a thing where, like, an army was coming at him, and he just sat on a wall, and he was, strumming some instrument, and his opponent was like, I'm not going in there because he's too confident. There's a trap. Let's pull out. But he actually didn't have enough people to win. It was a psychological fake out, right?
That's why Sun Tzu's famous, is he was one of the first people to, like, write down psychology of warfare.
Yeah, Rin's book would be, just kill them. Just kill them, and then if they're not dead, kill them again. And just keep killing them, and then say that you're in the right, because you can't have sexual assault if everyone's dead, Ben.
But my point...
Checkmate.
Yeah, that's true. I think that this is another problem of... I don't think Kuang knows what Rin is doing is stupid. And it's, again, I don't like Rin because she's stupid, not because she's cruel. I also don't like her because she's cruel. I don't like Rin for
both.
Yeah, I also don't like her because she's cruel. But the reason I'm disconnecting from the story is because her stupid decisions are portrayed as not stupid. Everything she does that is on its face idiotic is portrayed as a reasonable response to circumstance. And I think that's why you have such a problem with it, because she is cherry picking little battles and sieges and historic events here and there from an era they don't belong in.
Well, she also seems to have this concept that war is a 100% attrition game where there's no surrender. It's just kill everyone. Every war is a battle for attrition. Like, I have to go back to the last book, Ben, because I'm seeing this from a different lens, okay? It's a civil war, right? Daji, she was given bad seeds. She's not going to have enough food for her people up in the north, right? So she needs to go conquer the South with its plentiful rice paddies. And what does she do, Ben? She poisons all the waterways. Well, not all the waterways, but the main waterway, and then destroys all the rice crops in the South. Why? What is her purpose for taking back the South? That's just more mouths she cannot possibly feed anymore.
Well, and you're right. And of course, the answer to that question is Kuang did not think about it from Daji's perspective. She only thought of what would be an interesting challenge for Rin to overcome.
Shocking war crimes. That's what it is. Not all war is war crimes. The United States, when we were hopping island to island, we had the option to drop poison gas on those cave holdouts to kill the Japanese soldiers without having to risk our own men. And we made the decision not to. We didn't decide to just let's war crime it up because we've got the option at our disposal. They asked the appropriate question of just because we can, does that mean we should?
Well, no, you're right. And
we had the means to do poison gas on enemy soldiers, and we decided against it. Because that would open up a horrible can of worms. No one wanted to go down that path. No one wanted to be the first one to redo World War I's worst hits.
Well, and exactly, and that's the reason why when other people got nukes, we stopped using them, because then they could, oh no, we don't want you to nuke us back. And it's the same with poison gas. There's a reason war crimes are war crimes, because like all war is a crime, but like war crimes are just real stupid things to do because it's gonna make the whole experience way worse than it needs to be. It's just certain things that both sides agree. 'Twould be better to lose the fight than to do this.
Yes. And again, Kuang seems to think, or at least portray, that every war is an all-or-nothing game. If you're on the losing side, you're just going to be butchered, which is not true. And every war is just war crimes nonstop. If you have the means to do something, go ahead and do it, which is just a stupid thing to do. And again, I don't think she has background in war. I don't even know if she cares to write about the war part of these books, but she did it for 3 books, and it's like, you either should get good at that part or minimize it in your story and focus on something else.
Honest historical question here. Did Chiang Kai-shek and the CCP not put aside their fighting when the Japanese invaded?
As far as I'm aware, they did.
I think they did.
Because, dude, they captured Chiang Kai-shek, and Joseph Stalin, he intervened. He was like, no, you gotta let him go, because you guys need to fight off this Japanese bullshit that's coming your way. And part of that was Joseph Stalin didn't want to have to be the one that would have to fight them in Eastern Russia, but Joseph Stalin was able to put pressure on Mao and the CCP to release Chiang Kai-shek when they had him in captivity.
Yeah, so, and again, I understand it's 1-to-1 sometimes, and then when it's not 1-to-1, I can only assume I would be told that's intentional. But the whole story as a historical allegory or retelling, like, you can't pick verbatim certain battles from World War II and certain events from World War II and then not expect me to wonder why didn't Dragon Province intervene when Mugen invaded?
Yeah, they had a big navy. They could have made a difference.
Yeah, because that was
what if the Muganese won?
That was the
then?
Yeah, and like that's the weird thing about Rin not having an ideology, because I feel like, and I don't know, maybe this is an outsider perspective that isn't true, but I feel like both sides had a vision for China that both sides thought they were doing the best thing for China. Maybe not for every Chinese person, but for whatever their idea of China was. And I don't get the vibe that Viceroy had any such vision. He just wants to be king.
And Rin just wants to kill people who were mean to her.
Well, and I guess maybe Viceroy does have a vision that like they need to modernize and they need to accept some degree of Hesperian rule to do that.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense. So the 2 people who had visions were Daji and Viceroy. Rin's just a soldier in this war, and she never ever gets above that, even when she's leading troops. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think Daji is the more interesting protagonist from Rin's perspective.
I would have loved if Rin and Daji spent more time together and Rin became more like Daji or started thinking more like her and realizing how hard it was to run this stupid country and just all the various challenges of the world. Because Rin doesn't have a world view. Literally, I'm saying like she doesn't have a view of the world. She has a view of a province or the view of her immediate surroundings.
I honestly think this is Words About Books moment where I'm going to suggest a way to improve the story.
Oh my God.
Rin wins the war in part 1.
Yes, I could be fine with that.
Part 2 and 3. Part 2 is Rin trying and not doing well running a country. And then part 3 is like Neja comes back. Yeah, and she loses.
Well, yeah, that's my idea. You pick part 2 or you pick part 3. In this case, you're saying pick part 3 and make that the book. And I agree that could have worked.
There's 2 routes you can take to finish the Poppy War. and it kind of cements what the Poppy War is or is not. You can either make it part 2 and go the fantasy route. I think if you made it about part 2 leans into the shamanism, the fantasy, the religion.
Yep, the history, all that stuff.
But then you got to throw out the realistic historical battles. If you make it all part 3, you can focus on the politics, the history, the complicated issue of colonialism, but then you got to throw out the religion. You just don't have time for it.
And throw out, we both agree, throw out part 1. It's worthless.
We do both agree.
It does not help. It's just 250 pages you could have used elsewhere, or 200, or however many pages it is. It's a lot of pages of your book that is doing nothing for the story.
I'm with you on that.
Then you have to rush, which is what's going to happen in part 3. Do we want to get back to the summary?
Yeah, please.
Or do you have more?
No, please
okay.
Go.
So real quick, I also so Rin she takes over this town, right? And she realizes she really likes having authority to go with her power, and she realizes that she would have also betrayed Nezha for power. So and then we go and we get the most Naruto fucking shit. Nezha and Rin, they meet their armies literally at the Valley of the End, with the first Hokage, the Emperor behind Nezha, and the Uchiha guy, which is being played by the Spirally Queen, behind Rin. So they've got their 2 patrons behind them as giant stone statues carved into this hill, and they fight using their superpowers, and Rin, I guess her army gets the upper hand over Nezha's army, but Nezha has the upper hand over her. So the battle is basically inconclusive, and Nezha is able to retreat his army from the field, and Rin feels like a failure because she can't even touch him. Anything more to add on that? Rin pulls out her Rasengan, but Nezha's got his Sharingan. He sees it. He starts copying her abilities, and anything more to add? It literally evoked the end of the first part of Naruto, where Sasuke and Naruto are fighting on the big statues.
I'm going to say something that is going to make me even more unpopular. I think that's too generous.
Oh my god.
The fight was so boring. So I'm gonna take.
He brings out umbrellas or something. Or
I'm gonna take a page from Red Letter Media, like the very first, the prequel reviews, and where he says that the simple choreography of Obi-Wan versus Vader in A New Hope is so much more meaningful and interesting than jumping around a volcano. These giant set pieces, these giant shaman powers, you're doing that as fan service. You're doing that she's doing that because she has to. Because that's what people like. If there's no big shaman fight at the end of this book, nobody is going to be happy. But what does the way they fight mean? There should be meaning to it. Like, Rin is fire. Nezha is water. They are opposing elements. They are yin and yang. They are man and woman, and they have a connection that borders on romantic. And they have betrayed each other again and again.
He is a rich aristocrat, and she is a poor, like the poorest of poor dirt farmers, basically.
And she and he are balancing each other. Neither one of them can ever win. Like, if you were to do this right, like, neither one of them can ever win. They are the balance.
Yes, that makes sense, because in the Pantheon, all 64 gods are in balance. And here they are on the mortal plane. And they say this often, that when they're not in the Pantheon, there's nothing to balance them. So they just go crazy. They don't have anything to check them. And here, yes, you're right. Here they are. Water and fire, they're opposing. They're checking one another.
They constantly go round and round in a cycle. Neither can win. But you could make it symbolic in that the sum total of their things, they're constantly wrestling for the upper hand. Sometimes one has it, sometimes the other has it. But
I agree.
Ultimately, they can't defeat one another.
There's push and pull.
And they don't even really want to, because they complete each other. And that is the more meaningful thing. But the other thing Kuang rejects, and I'm not saying they got to kiss and date and all that crap. I'm not saying it has to be romantic, but there is some lingering tension between Rin and Neja that never pays off. And that's
they almost kiss at the end of the second book, and then he stabs her.
Right. But then this is what their fight should be. I don't need these big set pieces and these stupid tarps and...
Otherwise, it goes on too long. You lose the emotional connection that really draws you into the fight and makes the fight important and meaningful.
Yeah.
I'm with you on this one. I agree.
Yeah, and like I can't necessarily... This is actually a challenging one. I can't think of how to do it better, because doing it better requires an entirely different setup.
Like it requires an entirely different book.
This isn't even the conflict I would choose to go into. Like the final defense of Arlong is not... And the dragon... Okay, so here's another problem. Let's talk about the dragon.
Oh, yeah. God. So do you want me to set up the Battle of Arlong real quick?
Yeah, do the Battle of Arlong go all the way to the dragon, because I have a lot of thoughts on that.
They say multiple times, we're going to march on Arlong, but in a straight-up fight, Neja's army is bigger, better trained. It's going to beat us. I know we had wave after wave of Southerners, but not here. So the plan is Rin is going to take Poison Girl and the Great Turtle, who's an earthbender. I forgot to mention that. And they're going to go together with Rin, and they're going to kill the dragon. Poison Girl is going to poison this grotto. It's going to kill the dragon. That way, Neja will be depowered, and we'll kill Neja, and then once Neja's out of the way, we've got a 4-0 shaman advantage, and we will win for sure. Strangely enough, that 1/3 of the Hesperian fleet never shows up, and also strangely enough, Rin is convinced she can kill a dragon, aka a god, which... I don't know where she got that idea.
Can I
Maybe it was
interrupt
wishful
you?
thinking. Maybe she's stupid. Yeah, go ahead.
So, what the dragon essentially is, if I understood the text correctly, is a shaman who was taken over by their god.
Yes, so he's immortal.
Yes, and so
that's the rule
we've established this, that the reason all those people are imprisoned in the Chula Korik is because they can no longer be killed.
Yes.
And
Rin
she already encountered this with Phalia. Not Phalia.
I was like, with Phalia, huh?
Phalin. It's the wrong fantasy. She already encountered this with the wind god. She buried him under tons and tons of rock, and like the trifecta, no body, but it's over because she's done with it. And
well, to be fair, he can't get out. Like,
right?
I can accept that. So it's like he's an
weak.
immortal god who's just trapped under there. I
weak.
can accept that. Ben, what's the opposite of air? It's earth. Exactly. He's buried under tons of rock. It's done and over with.
Here's the thing. According to the rules of the story, she can't kill the dragon. And we could say, well, you know, you're being nitpicky assholes. Here's the thing, though. She literally can't kill the dragon. She literally
she knows
can't
this,
kill.
And she's like, I can't believe I can't actually kill it. It's like, no shit.
So here again, Ren's stupid.
Okay, so she is stupid. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I thought, where she's like, I'm going to kill a dragon. I'm like, it's weird that you think you can kill a dragon. Do you know something I don't?
Well, and
she thinks that she can poison this grotto and it will kill him, and it's like, but he doesn't actually need the water.
Yeah, we keep trying to make this something it's not. Like, we keep trying to say... this is why I was confused, because we keep trying to say that it's a dragon when in fact it's a shaman taken over by the dragon god. There's no such thing as a dragon. Like, there's no animal, the dragon. There's no creature of this material plane that is a dragon. This is not a dragon. It's the same thing that's imprisoned in the Chulukorik. Why do we think it's something else? And that's why I wondered if I missed something in the text. But the fact that it is what I think
she shows up and she goes, oh shit, I can't win. It's like, okay, that was it? That was your plan? You have no plan B? What if you couldn't kill this thing, which you can't? What, your plan B was just like, well, I guess my army's gonna die now? I was baffled, Ben. I was baffled, and it gets worse.
Yep. Well, it's a good thing the Hesperians were actually working on the problem.
Yeah, so... Yeah, they were. Yeah, so Nezha shows up. He just straight up bodies her entire shaman force. But then the dragon awakens. She can't kill it. And then the Hesperians come in. Or no, the dragon is going to he's like, all right, I'm destroying Arlong. And Nezha, the hero that we need, okay? Nezha's like, no. Hey, he calls him by his brother's name too. He's like, look, I'll be with you forever. I'll give you myself. Please spare Arlong. Those are innocent people. And I was like, this book should have just been about Nezha. And Rin, can't even believe this almost. Like, you're going to sacrifice yourself. You
coward.
Yeah. And then the Hesperians come in, and they drop an electrical line. It shocks Nezha. It shocks the dragon. It shocks Rin. None of them can use their power. The dragon retreats. Apparently, there is no god of lightning in the Pantheon, or else that would be, the one true god. Because all of them apparently are weak to being shocked.
So here's
By the way, the electricity comes out of the only airship that participates in this battle, even though they should still have a third of their fleet left. Continue, Ben.
Well, I was going to say, as I understand it, the weapon the Hesperians have come up with against the shamans, it is basically shock therapy. If you disrupt the nervous system, it breaks the connection to the Pantheon.
Yeah, we talked about that, and after reading this whole book, I don't think that's what this is, because that would imply that this is anything. I think Kuang was just like, okay, well, I need a way to, get rid of this, so, okay, we shock him. Done.
Question.
Because why would the shock affect the god? Or I should say, the shaman who is possessed by a god and is effectively invincible and immortal. Why would that work?
Do we remember when opium bombs worked?
That's a good point, Ben.
Rin probably should have brought some opium bombs.
Or the Hesperians should have bombed the... I don't know, man. There's a lot of things that they probably should have done, but Rin's entire plan was, all right, we're going to have our army engage their army in a battle they cannot possibly win, and then I'm going to go kill this dragon god thing, and then, I guess, question mark, profit. I guess after she defeats the dragon, she can then defeat Nezha, because he can't heal anymore, and then, I guess I'm going to come back and valiantly save the day? Question mark, with my 20 foot of flame?
Yeah, so the whole book is an issue of setups and payoffs. Nothing that is set up pays off. And very little that is supposed to be a payoff was in any way set up. So Arlong, in this mess, is destroyed.
Yes. Were you shocked? They just had to keep telling me, yeah, and we won. Yeah, the dragon flooded the city, and we won. Our numerically inferior army that we kept telling you, the reader, could not win this battle, we won by dumb luck. The dragon awakened, and you didn't kill it like you planned, but, he did the work for us, and we won. It's over, Rin. We won.
The shock had worn off for me at the end of part 2 when I realized this wasn't good.
When the trifecta was awakened and then immediately blown up.
blown up by the very same forces they had once effortlessly destroyed and were being awakened to destroy again.
That's a good point. And you're awakening someone. You're awakening someone who can't get the job done. That's your entire part 2.
Metagaming this, I guess. At this point, the book was running out of pages.
Yes, absolutely, Ben. Because we are fucking rushed now. You want to move on to what happens next?
Yeah, go on. I don't have anything to say again until the Venka incident.
So, Rin wins by pure dumb luck and convenience. Hooray! You did it. Not you, actually. You didn't do it, but, like, you get to reap the rewards. And so, at page 536, Rin has won her war, and now it's time to run her country just straight into the ground. She runs the country, I think, for like 2 chapters at best. It's like, alright, there's some traitors, they're trying to assassinate us secretly, we gotta avoid some assassination attempts, gotta root these traitors out, and we torture the nun to death, and we gotta run this entire country, but we don't know how to run the entire country, and oh yeah, Nejo's mom is dead. Just keep moving on. We don't know how to run this country. We're just kids, you know? We're just kids, Ben. We don't know how to run this country. And they don't know how to run this country, and everything goes to shit. And then Rin wonders. Because, see, this whole time, Neja keeps somehow getting letters directly into Rin's residence. And she's like, how does he keep doing this?
Letters which are oftentimes helpful and genuine advice.
Yes, it is like, hey, Rin, I just want to let you know, like, the granaries are empty, and we are working on this problem, and here's what we are doing, and, like, Rin, I genuinely want what's best for this country. Accept my help, please, because if you f*** this up, tons of people are going to have to face the horror of starvation. Please listen to my advice, I'm trying to help you. And Rin's like, the f*** keeps sending me these letters? I know. It's gotta be Venka! I knew it! She was betraying me all along!
Everybody betrayed me. I fed up with this world.
Let's get her. Venka's like, that's, like, preposterous. That's really stupid. And then she's like, look out! And she runs at Rin, and Rin's like, this bitch is trying to kill me. And then no, Venka gets shot by an assassin trying to save Rin.
Yeah, Venka takes a bullet for Rin as Rin's accusing her of betraying her.
Yes. And then Rin's like, well, I just have to keep thinking that she was the traitor, or else I'll shot her.
Yeah.
I'll shot her back.
Let me tell you. I need to get real comfortable and adjust my mic for this one. Maybe go ahead and shatter. Maybe not shattering isn't working. Maybe face some of these demons and just shatter. If you had a complete nervous breakdown and were replaced by somebody else tomorrow, it would be a net good for everyone you've ever known.
Yeah. Like I said, if Rin never existed, the world would be a much better place in pretty much every way.
I would love... I really don't mean this to sound as dismissive as it does. If you're one of the people who struggled real hard reading this because it was just such an emotional beating to you, were you not sick of Rin by this point? I guess that's what I don't understand. That's the big disconnect between me and people who were crushed by this book.
I couldn't wait for it to fucking happen soon enough.
I don't understand by the end being crushed by it. I mean, surely you must have expected it.
No,
surely.
No, I'm crushed, Ben.
Well,
I can't believe this.
Does crushed mean
Rin was my favorite character?
Does crushed mean you didn't see it coming? That's I guess my question to people who were crushed. When you say that, does that mean you thought it could go any other way? Or that it was just hard to watch happen? I get if it was just hard to watch happen, but like for me, where I identify with people is I identify with Rin's victims, not Rin. Like, there came a point in Rin's evolution where I no longer identified with Rin and I started identifying with the people she hurt. And while I can acknowledge intellectually that it is a crap hand Rin was dealt in life, and that if anything about her environment had been different, she might have ended up differently, and that is sad, it doesn't crush me. I wouldn't describe what I'm feeling as crushed. I just wonder if it hit you like you didn't expect this from a fantasy book, like you expected that there would be some godly deus ex machina that would excuse all of Rin's stupid, cruel decisions, or was it just hard to watch someone have that kind of fall? Because I do feel a real disconnect, and I roll my eyes at a few of these reviews that are like, I'm not okay, I'll never be okay. It's like, that to me seems like an overreaction, but I don't want to be unfair, and I could just be misunderstanding. But I'm trying to understand, and it just, like, I've said before so many times in this podcast, I don't like Rin because Rin is stupid and cruel, not because Rin is tragic. Like, this is kind of
like you said, it would make more sense if she were the person saying, I make the hard decisions.
This isn't Hamlet, this is Macbeth. Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Where in Macbeth, everything bad that happens to Macbeth is because Macbeth is a dumb idiot. All Macbeth has to do is not be a dumb idiot. Like, plan the murder better. Not do a murder. Tragedy averted.
Tragedy averted.
That's Rin. Like, if you were crushed at the end of Macbeth, then I can see you being crushed. This is a comparison I was not planning to make.
The comparison I had, Ben, since we're jumping on that, is, would it help if you knew that Joseph Stalin grew up poor, or that Hitler was homeless for some time? They had some adversity and their lives weren't super great. They were still, like, horrible, though, right? Like, they were still awful people. I wasn't shattered when I heard the end of World War II, that Hitler died. I wasn't, like...
I think I'd compare it more to a celebrity you found out did something terrible. But, like, people who were shocked about O.J. Simpson.
It's a weird direction our fucking podcast went.
What I'm saying is, Rin is not dissimilar from O.J. Simpson. If you take one thing away from this podcast,
I might cut out all the preamble to that and just put that quote down.
What I'm trying to say is, Rin is O.J. Simpson without Johnny Cochran.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately for Rin, that glove fit.
Oh my god.
Which is ironic because she lost that hand.
Oh my god. Oh my god. So yeah, is there anything more to Venka is a betrayer, but clearly she isn't a betrayer?
I'll tell you, if I was going to be crushed by anything, it was that, because I actually did care about Venka. I liked Venka quite a bit. I'm crushed for Kitay, I'm crushed for Venka, I'm crushed for Naja. Rin can get f***ed.
Rin's like, well, we've poorly run this country. Let's go start a war against Hesperia. They're coming back, right? I know where I can get support for this war that nobody except me, literally nobody except me wants. I'm going to go to Rooster Province. Those are my people who I've looked down upon for like 2 whole books and only saw as a tool.
Well, that's not why she goes to Rooster Province. She goes to Rooster Province because everybody in Dragon Province keeps trying to kill her. Because she sucks. I thought it was
a combination of both. But yeah, okay. So
no, Kitay's not on board with this Hesperia thing.
Yeah, I know. And neither is anyone in Rooster Province, which she finds out, because a lot of them are starving to death because you have a serious famine issue. But thank God there's a ton of opium they can sell for grain, Ben.
Well, good news, now there's not.
Yeah, someone lights that on fire. You know, I did look it up. There's a lot of crops that grow in about the time it takes to grow opium.
Yeah.
Why didn't you plant food?
She said that Rooster Province doesn't have good soil for food.
If I were starving to death,
and
I had the crops, I don't think I'd care about the soil at this point. I'd go, I'm literally willing to try whatever.
What did they eat before?
Opium, apparently.
Yeah. Like that's
I ate nuggets of opium.
That's my thing. There's no refrigerated trains. There's no, I mean, I guess you can import grain. It travels pretty well, but like a lot of food is grown pretty close to where it's sold in fantasy times. It's actually one of the big limiting factors of their economy.
Who knows what time this is? That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
They have futuristic cities that are like borderline neuromancer.
The Hesperians are doing shit Amazon's currently researching with package delivery.
Yes. The Hesperians are more advanced than we are in modern times, and the Nikarans are, I don't know, sometime in the 1500s, and the Muganese are around World War II level. There's a humongous technological imbalance in the world. Who the knows, Ben, if you could ship that grain? But the fact is, this is in the South, and it has been established that the South is like the breadbasket of the country. They grow a lot of food in the South and ship it to the rest of the country. Why are you growing opium? Like, Rin's like, well, we could sell it for grain. It's like, yeah, but you could just plant the grain and have it.
I can imagine a world where you can sell opium for more grain than you could produce on your land. I can imagine.
Who's buying the opium?
Well,
because I feel like the biggest market for the opium is Nakara.
It would have been Moag. Moag would have bought the opium.
And who would she have sold it to?
You're making valid points.
I'm selling the opium to you, Moag. All right, cool. I now have 30 tons of opium, and my buyers are Nikarans. Oh shit, I didn't think this out.
Well,
and they don't have anything they can give to me for this opium. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think Kitay wanted to surrender a long time ago.
Yeah, because he recognized that we have literally zero experience running a coffee shop, let alone a goddamn nation. They mentioned that the nation keeps fighting tiny civil wars because, duh, no shit. You literally have imposed no order on anything. You just went through and burned shit for the lulz, and now, oh wow, there's pirate bands breaking out. And
why didn't somebody tell me not to burn the cities? Sun Tzu, you fucking asshole. Let's skip to the end.
Yeah, so, the opium burns, so it doesn't even matter, and Rin's like, fine, we'll go talk with Neja. And they go and meet on Spear.
Yeah, and the whole reason Rin agrees to it is because she's planning to use the temple at Spear to nuke Hesperia.
Yeah.
Which does not solve her food problem at all.
First of all, it doesn't solve the food problem, and second of all, Kitay does not know this, even though... Hold on, bring it in. They're spiritually bonded together. They know each other's thoughts. They're basically one person inhabiting two bodies. And this is what you fucking established.
And Rin thinks Kitay is betraying her, even though that shouldn't be possible. But I want to reiterate, Rin's plan is to nuke the place where the food she was
grain.
Yeah, where the food she's trying to buy is.
So you mentioned, like, I think that Kuang is trying to write Rin as going crazy, and I would say maybe perhaps in the last 20 pages or so, Rin is going crazy, but I kind of just think Rin is just continuing to be the same dumb little idiot on a much larger scale now.
Rin,
and again, why does Kitay not know this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Rin does have a full, like, break with reality. She does obviously go insane, and that's a thing.
I don't think she goes insane because of her god, though.
No.
I think she goes insane because, oh, now I have to rule. Oh, no.
Well,
and she just, like, she shatters, Ben.
Let me tell you, man, I'm not a doctor, okay, like you are, but I got to imagine years now of hard drug use, no sleep, and constant suppression of any emotion lest you shatter does lead to psychosis.
Neja is there. He's not looking so great, and he's like, the Hesperians are willing to cave in a lot of your demands. They want access to the country, but they won't colonize it the same way that they were going to under Viceroy. And, like, they'll give you grain. You know that whole thing that we're here for? Like, everyone's starving to death? They'll give us grain.
They'll even let her be in charge.
Yeah, they'll even let you stay in charge, Rin. I just don't want my people to starve to death.
The only stipulation that Rin cannot stomach is, again, I can't call the Phoenix. Now, let me tell you, and I don't know if this is intentional. This could have been. At the end of book 2, when they say, you got to stop calling the Phoenix, that feels like the Hesperians trying to take Rin's autonomy and freedom. And that it feels wrong. At the end of this book, when they ask Rin to stop calling the Phoenix, that sounds like the most reasonable thing in the world.
Yes. Please stop nuking continents. Please stop burning people to death. Please stop disturbing the natural world with your horrific power that you exercise with no oversight.
Please
for
stop,
the love of God.
Please stop turning children into opium-addicted shamans that you're going to throw away. Please, like, just everything you've done points out, like, this is what I can't imagine was intentional. Was it intentional that there should be no redeeming qualities to shamanism whatsoever?
See, that's the thing. Because in the first book, it almost feels like there is a good thing about it. It's the spirituality aspect. You're more one with the nature of the universe. And that takes I was going to say a back seat, but no, it's thrown out the car.
It makes it seem like...
No one gives a shit about spirituality after that first book.
Like, the text is hypercritical of both Makerism and shamanism, and it seems like the point Kuang is trying to make is that, yeah, there might be gods, but you know what? I'm going to do a quote from Game of Thrones. Like, there's oh, your father doesn't believe in the gods? No, he believes in them. He just doesn't like them. That's kind of the gods in this. It's like, never contact the Pantheon.
No, they're all horrible.
Yeah, every being in the Pantheon is going to try to take over your body and destroy the world. And the Maker is made out to be like a false god. And so the solution is basically just, you know, that comfortable having forgotten about spirituality we did? That's where you want to be.
Let's do that again.
Yeah. And, like, that's the takeaway. Shamanism never does anything good.
Yeah, that's the thing, Ben. There are supposed to be, like, good gods, I would say. I know, okay, it's not good and evil, blah, blah, blah. There's a healer god. One would assume there's, like, an earthen fertility god, a god of the harvest. We have a horrible crisis. We have
keep rolling shamans until you get a harvest.
Exactly. Keep giving people opium. Eventually someone's going to be able to save crops.
I'm going to posit the theory that if you access the Pantheon with hard drug use and your most miserable memory, you're going to be drawn to gods of a predominantly negative
Except
disposition.
for Healer Woman, apparently.
Exception.
Let's have her go back to the Pantheon, see if she can get herself a god of the harvest.
So I'm just going to sprint to the end. So Rin starts a knife fight with Naja, and everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? And Rin's like, you knew this wasn't a negotiation. This is an assassination. And Naja and Kitay's like, I am so sorry, Naja. I did not know she was going to do this. And Naja's like, can you control her? And she's like, don't talk about me like I'm not here. You brought him here to kill me. And then
no, you turned her against me. No, you did that to yourself.
She force chokes Padme for a minute, and then she starts fighting Naja, and then Naja kills her. And
Kitay tries to kill himself, and she's like, no. And then she starts abusing Kitay, and then she has this moment of clarity of, oh, I'm an abusive asshole. And then she's like, Naja, if you kill me, the Hesperians will trust you, and then you can rule. Earn this moment, Naja. Earn this moment. And Naja's like, oh, okay, bye.
Yeah, and then there's an epilogue where Naja's like, she was a goddess. And I was like, Naja, you don't even believe that.
You don't believe that at all. She was... unless it... No, maybe it's in the context of, like, the gods are horrible, awful, asshole creatures that shouldn't exist. And yeah, she was a goddess then. She should not have existed. We would be better off without her. Let's go back to atheism. Yay, atheism.
So let's sum up Rin's achievements. She fought a war against colonialism, and at the end, after having killed hundreds of thousands of people,
many of which were her own,
starved more, killed her best friend, and a bunch of other important people, she decided that, they should probably let them colonize it anyway because we're out of food.
Yes. The takeaway message is colonialism bad?
Yeah, so the end is religion bad, magic bad, colonialism if you're out of food.
Colonialism A-okay in certain situations. And I know we were talking about this, and you're like, well, maybe it's a commentary or a question of, like, what is the legacy of colonialism? It's not just a black and white thing. Yeah, it's mostly bad. Like, I'm not going to argue that it was some sort of force of good, but there are legacies of colonialism that you can't just put in a black and white. Nope. That's not what it is. I do not buy that for one fucking bit, because I read 636 pages that do not lead me to believe that is a message at all. I
do think that's what she's going for.
If that is what she's going for, it was very, very, very poorly executed. D-.
I don't think she's trying to say in any way that colonialism is good. The Hesperians are objectively they're objectively
just like
racist.
All the Nikarans are. Yeah.
Well, yeah, true. But I think that's her point, though. I think that's her point, is that it's not black and white in the sense that there aren't good guys and bad guys. There's people abusing and taking advantage of people.
I think you're being generous here, because I don't see much of a point here at all. We just killed a whole bunch of people, and in the end, we just sold the country out to Hesperia anyway, but in a slightly different way.
And in the end, it didn't even matter. I think that's what she was going for. I think it raises interesting questions. I think the Poppy War trilogy, of all the fantasy I see people reading, of all the fantasy that's gotten popular in the last 10 to 20 years, I think the Poppy War discusses some of the most interesting stuff. There's good here. It just did not come together into a cohesive story, and it would have meant so much more if it had. It'll make you think. We've been having very interesting discussions, both on the podcast and off the podcast, about the Poppy War and what it means to history and what it means to culture, colonialism, legacy, racism, religion, all that stuff. There's a lot of interesting ideas here. It just doesn't crystallize. And in some ways, I think there's another good comparison to like something like Dune, where Dune raises a lot of interesting points, and it does eventually get around to saying something. But I'm interested to see where Kuang goes. I think she said in an interview that one of the big challenges was having to carry on a story that you set up when you were 19. I'm going to chalk some of this up to her having evolved as a person and maybe not being in the right headspace to finish this story she set up when she was 19. I'm interested to see where she goes now that she is a little older and a little wiser.
Well, if you don't have answers, at least raise the questions. I didn't feel this was about how do people like Mao get into power? I thought this was just a person who isn't really even a person because she doesn't behave like a person is an angry, rage-filled, crazy person for 636 pages and just goes on a killing spree left and right. And at the end, none of her killing spree made much of a difference at all. The end.
I definitely think Kuang lost Rin somewhere along the way.
That's fine. Leave her there. She sucks. Honestly, at the end of the last book, Neja, once you were done stabbing her, you should have stabbed her again and finished the job. Well,
I think I commented on the last book, actually, that, who stabbed somebody in the back to knock them out?
Well, the thing is, why did they just knock her out? They wanted the Hesperians to get a test subject, right? But they already captured the other members of the Psyche. And they killed them for some reason. Wouldn't you want backups? Rin wasn't doing too well, what with the shards of metal in her back.
I think you're right. I think, I don't know. I'm interested to read Kuang's next story. I'm not ready to write off Rebecca Kuang yet.
Well, Ben, like we said, towards the end of the year, or really whenever, if you want to read Babel, I want to say.
I'm definitely going to read Babel.
You could tell me all about it on the podcast. Well, I don't think she's not talented. Like I said, I really enjoyed her first two books, and I know it doesn't come across that way because how much I just bitched and complained. But yeah, no, this book was a letdown. It was supposed to be a slam dunk, and instead. Well, I was going to have a section for this. I was going to build it up, but I was too annoyed at this book to do that. But Ben, last year, we made a bet. We made a bet that you thought that somehow Kitay was not going to die from their spiritual bond link. And I disagreed. And we bet a book pick on this. And I want to tell you, after reading this book on how, Kitay couldn't sense Rin's thoughts of, betrayal and genocide, he very well could have survived this stabbing. But he, in fact, did not survive.
Yeah, I thought I was reading a book that understood setups and payoffs.
Nope, they set it up with... Really, they shouldn't have done the Kara thing. What was the point of that? They shouldn't have done the Kara thing, I want you to go on, Chagan, so that you can unite our clans in 2 months. It's no, they should have just kept her alive. Her death meant nothing.
Yeah, Kara was really holding him back.
Yeah, no, it made no sense whatsoever to kill Kara and then for them to undo the bond. They shouldn't have even had a way to undo the bond. That should have been the drawback. If you bind yourself to someone, you are forever bound until you die.
That was bad writing. But I did lose my bet. So what do you want to do with your newfound power over me?
Oh my god, I'm gonna do the book equivalent of genocide, Ben. We're gonna read Ready Player 2.
That is the book equivalent of genocide.
And, Ben, you also foolishly made a bet. If you died in a Phasmophobia game on stream, you'd have to read a book.
I did,
So
yes.
at some point this year, we're just going to do a month of Klein. We're going to read Ready Player 2 together, and then you're going to also read Armada by Ernest Cline. So I get 7 picks this year. You get 5.
Twitter, WABpod. Buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/WABpod. We read a lot of books. It's hard work. We need coffee. Twitch.tv/wordsaboutbooks. We stream every Monday. Be there or be square. Instagram, Words About Books podcast. Good news, I cured obesity. Bad news.
I also cured living. The following is a brief reenactment of a scene from the last book by Nate and his horrible voices. I've had enough of playing philosopher with a people so timid they shrink from the pantheon. I need hard power, military might. The horse warlord can give us that. What can you give me? Endless conversations about the cosmos? You've no idea how ignorant you still are. I see you've anchored yourselves. Did it hurt? Don't be surprised. You're so obviously bound I can see it shining out of you. You thinks it makes you strong, but it's going to destroy you. You don't know what you're talking about. No? Then here's a prophecy for you. Your bond will shatter. You will destroy one another. One will die. One will die. And the other one will also die.